air. David is the founder of the Powerful Living Experience. And yeah, David and Carol and his wife are just amazing. We had the privilege of actually going to Guatemala this past December with our 3 oldest children to their wedding, which was an experience. Everything David does is a powerful living experience.
It's really Carol Gutierrez's experience, but yeah.
I was trying to give David some credit without Carol here. We all know it's Carol. And so for those of you who are watching for the first time from David's tribe or community or the Family Brand page, welcome. And Family Brand, we believe that every family can decide what it is their family stands for, and that every family can decide what it is their family is going to be known for by creating their family's brand. Like no different than you would as an organization or as an entrepreneur. And when you create your family's brand, not only are you going to create this intentional culture that will benefit your family now, but you'll be laying a foundation that could benefit your generations to come. And what's so interesting, are you starting a watch party, David?
I'm trying to, but I don't even know how this thing works. I think I just did.
So, yeah, you're doing it. It's amazing. And so what's interesting though, David, is oftentimes as entrepreneurs, I know for me, it's so much easier to be more intentional in our business and the brand of our company and the culture of our company than our own family brand and our own family culture. And it wasn't until we actually took our family through the campfire effect process and created a family brand. And it was made all the difference for us. It made a profound difference in our home of what do we stand for as Smiths? What does it mean to be a Smith? What do we want to be known for? And creating that culture. And, look, we're on a mission to save families. We're on a mission to help families be more connected and really plant their family's flag. One of my values here up on the wall is, we can define what our family stands for or the world will. So it's why would we not define what it is we stand for? And look, for some of you know my story, I've lost, both of my brothers to addiction. I've lost an oldest nephew to addiction. I have a sister right now serving a prison sentence for addiction. And it's and then the struggles that my wife and I had and almost getting divorced and then taking a stand for family. And all of that has culminated in this, man, I just want to take a stand for families. And we know that the opposite of connection isn't, or the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And so I just, the world could use a lot of connection right now. And I'm just so honored to have David on here today to talk about some things that could really make a difference for your family right now. And so, look, we can't save families without your help. Please, if you're watching this right now, if you're watching this live, you can go and click a button that says host a watch party or start a watch party. That's different than just sharing this, because when you start a watch party, you literally go live on your page. So please start a watch party. So you're going live right now and sharing what Dave and I are about to talk about on your page. And please, like the Family Brand Facebook page and follow the Connection series. We have amazing guests like David. We have another one coming on this afternoon. So David, let's dive in to the deep end of the Family Brand swimming pool here. You ready?
Yeah, I am. I mean, first, Chris, I just want to say, one of the things that really stands out about you is your intentionality. You're very intentional about everything that you do. And it's no surprise to me that there's a conversation you're driving, which is about being very intentional with our families and what we stand for and the values of our family. And so I just want to acknowledge you for that, for both you and your wife, for Melissa, for taking a stand for families right now, when now more than ever, there's an opportunity to go through that definition process.
Thank you. Yeah. And it just what's interesting is my wife and I were at an entrepreneurship summit last year. It was actually Dave Ramsey's EntreLeadership. Really awesome summit, 3,000 entrepreneurs, small business owners, most of them families. And on the last day of the summit, Dave's standing up on stage and he's small businesses are the backbone of this country, and small businesses are the backbone of the American economy. And I love that, because we're a small business. We serve small businesses. And Melissa and I had never talked about this, Dave. The minute he said that, we both looked at each other and we're like, no, the backbone of this country is actually family. Mm. But I had never heard it in that context. I had even said the backbone of this country is small business. But that day we kind of had this moment. It was really this turning point for us, with Family Brand, because it was every small business owner is in a family and comes from a family. And the stronger the family, the stronger the small business, the stronger the entrepreneur, the stronger. I mean, it's just but I think I know that in times I've lost sight of that. And, mm-hmm. And the other thing that Melissa's been talking about for the last year is we always talk about leadership development, and in the form of workshops and coaching programs and mentorships, and a lot of what you teach is amazing. And Melissa's like, but Chris, you do realize like the greatest platform for leadership development in the world has been and always will be homes. And I was just like, yeah, I mean, it's easy not to think about it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
And like, so it's kind of like, are we creating this foundation where our children are leaving our homes with that kind of knowledge in place and loving themselves and feeling confident in who they are and like possessing those leadership qualities? So yeah, I thank you. And part of the reason, David, we want to do Family Brand is not from this place of like we're some perfected body of work, but it
Sure.
keeps us in the conversation around being intentional ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, 4 questions I ask all of our guests that I haven't told them that I'm going to ask them on the fly. When you think about your and Carol's family, right, and creating your own family brand, it's like, what would you want your family to be known for? And I know that's a big question, but what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Yeah, I think, gosh, it's such a big question because there's so many things that you know want to be known for. I think that what comes to mind is living in alignment with what we say, and
Mm,
and some part of that is honesty. Like, are we honest? Are we honest with ourselves? Are we honest in the way that, you know, as teachers, we're teaching in the world and doing our best to live what we teach? Because you and I know that there's you know, there's a tremendous amount uh, of teachers who don't walk their own walk or eat their own dog food.
yep.
Uh, and that's fine. Like, it's not a conversation about criticizing other people. It's just, that's what's important to us, is to live our values. So, because you know what, no matter what your values are, that's up to you. I mean, if you look at the political conversation today, it'd be a heck of a lot easier if people just acknowledged that instead of, you know, one group being right and one group being wrong, that we just had a difference of values and we respected that, and we allowed people to live their values. Um, but I think living in alignment with the values that we have, and then we can get into that list of values, which is what you're doing with family brand. Like, who do we want to be as a family? That's probably the most important thing. And it's like you
It's
said,
awesome.
it can be a challenging thing to do at times too, because I, you know, we came from families where that wasn't very well established, and we have a lot of models all around us, all of us do, of examples of people who say one thing and do another. And so holding yourself to that highest level of, and it's a funny word, right? But like integrity,
Yeah.
which again, I know is like one of the things that you've taught me, right? Integrity and intention is probably, you know, and again, we don't have kids yet, but is what I imagine would be important for us based on how we see, how we value, what we value right now in the way that we are in the world.
It's amazing. Yeah. And so the second question I usually ask is, so this idea is, what do you want to be known for? Right. Kind of like looking out into the future. And then the other question we pose to families in the actual family brand course is, what do you stand for as a family today? And sometimes those can be similar, sometimes those can be different. But when you look at like what you and Carol are really a stand for, not just like out in your business, but you and Carol and your family culture, your family unit, like what would you guys say you're a stand for? Like, what do you stand for as a family?
Responsibility. So,
Mm,
you know, we believe that each and every one of us has a tremendous, you know, ability to respond to the circumstances and situations in our life. And and we believe that there are a lot of people who don't have a capacity to respond powerfully in
mm,
terms of their means. And so one of the things that Carol and I have been talking about recently is taking radical responsibility. Like, what if all the problems in the world were your problem? Like, what
yeah.
if you couldn't easily just dismiss the fact that you've got, you know, potentially tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Indians who are starving in India right now because of the lockdown? You know, what if you said, like, that's my problem, and I'm going to do something about it? Not in a focus on problem sense, but it's so easy for us to become like very jurisdictional about, you know, what we connect emotionally to.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of tapping into your next level of capacity and your next level of wealth and your next level of impact is, you know, you essentially, I mean, it's almost it's kind of like the Superman motto, right? It's like, you know, wherever there is our problems, that's our responsibility. So at a macro level, like a global level, you go, no, that's my problem. The fact that the climate is breaking down is my problem. The fact that we have a refugee crisis is my problem. The fact that
Yeah.
we don't have effective governance going on is my problem. The fact that we have a prison problem and a homeless problem is my problem. And so I'm gonna do what I can over the course of my lifetime, maybe not all at once, but to solve the world's biggest problems. So like Carol and I realize we have an extraordinary ability to respond to the experiences in our life that we see as injustices. And then there's also taking personal responsibility. So as you go back down to the micro level, right? Like, how am I responsible for, Carol's reaction to me today? Or how am
Yeah,
I responsible for the failure of leadership within my organization? Or how am I responsible for the relationship that I have with my brother or my mother or my father? And if you can take radical responsibility around those things, what you then find is you're at peace, because you're not blaming someone else or some other thing for the problems, and you feel complete in the fact that you are doing what you can do to affect the situation or experience. So
totally.
I would like to be known for, I would love for people to look back on the Bayer family and go, man, those were people who took responsibility at a whole new level.
That's powerful. And see, I don't know if you can see my be 100% responsible
No, that's great.
and then pick up the pen. Those are the two things. Actually, David, you know a bit of my story, but 10 years ago when Melissa and I were separated, going to get divorced, and I was lost, and like felt like a failure as a husband, as a father, as an entrepreneur. I owed people money, failing businesses, and yet my personal culture was I wasn't responsible for any of it. It was everyone else's fault, right? Like,
Yeah.
the reason we were separated was because of Melissa. The reason I had failing business was because of the economy and bad partnerships. The reason, like, I had just never, and I read The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And there was one line, I only remember one line of that whole book. I know it's an amazing book. Everyone's always like, hey, have you read The Compound Effect? I'm like, yeah, I got one line and I stopped reading it because it changed. It was what I needed. And it talked about this idea of taking 100% responsibility for everything in your life. And I had just never consciously done it. And that changed everything for me, because it was like, well, if I'm 100% responsible, and if I really am the author of my story, which is the first time I accepted responsibility as the author, then that meant that I had written into existence everything in my life, which was humbling, to be
Right.
like, whoa, like I'm responsible for all of this, like the failing business, the failing marriage, like my unhappiness. But man, if I'm the author, I can pick up the pen and write a new version of my life and go live into it like a powerful creator. And like that, both of those are kind of mind blowing. But I love that. Like, can you imagine the power of children that are raised in a culture where it's like it's said with language every day and it's just lived? It like bears take radical responsibility. It's just who we are. And it's not just said, then it's modeled by mom and dad, and like, and not perfectly. Like, it's not like we have these values to because we perfectly execute on them all the time. It's to remind us. So one of the things that we really want to help all families with, David, is create their family mission statement, which is who are we now, the family vision statement, who are we committed to becoming, and the family values, like just how do we live. Or I could even see your family vision statement being like, we are committed. And so what we teach with families when you're creating your mission statement is you start it with a we believe, because there's that we element. And then the family vision statement is we are committed to. And so it's like then there's something we're committed to in the future. But I could see like you guys having a family vision statement. It's like we are committed to taking radical responsibility, or it could be one of the values, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Man, imagine kids growing up and like, and that language creates
Yeah.
like, it's amazing. Like they've had little kids draw pictures of themselves before with like these experiments and studies. And like little kids at 4 years old will draw a picture of themselves being like really tall or short or funny. And they'll be like, why'd you draw yourself so tall? It's like, oh, my dad always tells me I'm tall. Like language really shapes their identity. Okay.
Yeah,
I love
and your
that.
perception, you're right, because I didn't grow up. I mean, I grew up with a frame, but it wasn't a consciously developed frame. Like my frame that I grew up in was, it was important to be successful. It was important to work hard. It was important to get good grades. I grew up in a frame that had absent from it intimacy and connection in my parents' relationship. I grew up in a frame of worry. There were things to worry about. There were lots of problems. Things could go bad. And so, when you really look at it, those were the beliefs and the values of my family, right? Like
Yeah.
so many families. And those were
By
the beliefs
default.
by default. And those were the beliefs and the values, if you look back, of my parents' parents. And so like we're just unconsciously passing this frame on from generation to generation to generation that is really just, it's a very instinctual primal frame for the most part, because that's how we operate. And the consciously defining it really just sets a whole new, it reshapes the entire lens for your children and for yourself, because, ultimately whatever it is that is of highest value to you that you've gotten conscious of and clarity around, and whatever it is that you believe, that's ultimately what you're going to find, to your point of like, it's creative, right?
Yeah.
And you can see that, there are, that happiness or success or joy or impact, it from individuals in the world either takes place because they had a frame that established that for them, or because the frame was so broken that they hit their bottom and had to rebuild their frame. Right now, unfortunately,
Yeah.
most of the time it's the latter, right? You rebuild your frame in therapy. You rebuild your frame after going through 8 broken relationships. You rebuild your frame because you've hit bottom in drug and alcohol addiction. So you rebuild your frame. But we do have an opportunity, and I feel somewhat unusual about talking about this, right? I'm like, we do have this opportunity as parents where, like, we're still, planning on having children, but if I'm speaking to parents, right, we do have an
Totally.
opportunity, parents and his husbands and his wives and his brothers and his sisters and his sons and daughters and grandparents and to consciously create this structure that's tremendously influencing on everybody we love.
100%. I mean, if you guys are just watching this or just tuning in, again, if you're watching this live, start a watch party. Like, share this. Some of the things that David's already shared. It's everything that we believe. And here's what's interesting. Everyone has a culture in their home. So we hear from oftentimes from parents that'll say things like, well, the problem is the problem is we don't have a culture in our home. We haven't like thought about it. I'm like, oh, you have one. So just like I've heard business owners, clients of the Campfire Effect, will say like, oh, the problem is we don't have a culture in our company. It's like, no, you do. And based on you saying that, I kind of have a sense of what it is. It's unintentional and it's by default, but there's a culture. And
Yeah,
so
it's
just
like
there's
saying
this,
we haven't established values in my family. It's like, no, you have. You're just not aware of it.
yeah. Yeah. So it's like every family, I love that, David, every family, whether they're established or not, has values. Now, have they been consciously created? And are they promoting love and joy and connection and like standing for something? Or do you have values in a culture that's been subconsciously created by default, and it's promoting things that have really, unintended consequences? But so really, and the other thing is just to acknowledge parents out there. Look, I think the majority of parents are really trying to do their best. Like, the majority of parents really love their children and really love each other. And yet, if we could just have some help in knowing how to create these values in this culture by design rather than by default, yeah, that could make a real profound difference. And that's really the whole purpose behind what we're talking about, is just helping families take all the amazingness and all the goodness, but do it by design, by design instead of by default, and really maybe change the trajectory of the next generation and beyond, and create this ripple effect that literally has the opportunity to impact generations.
And it's like anything else, if you think about it, right? Like, you have your family. It's the most important thing to you. How frequently do we look for coaching and mentorship around how we're running our family? Like, you would never go and just jump into a helicopter and start flying the damn thing. But we do that with our families. In fact, a lot of times, it's like kids become unexpected, right? It's not, there's a lack of intentionality all the way through. And what I appreciate about what you guys are creating is that, if you want to excel at anything in your life, if you want to develop mastery, you have to be working with a mentor or a coach or someone who's actually been more thoughtful about it than you have, right? And who
Yeah.
can create a new awareness for you and show you the structure of what it means to be a powerful family. And you don't see that as something prominent in the market. I mean, when was the last time you saw an ad on your Facebook news feed, which was like, are you a mother or a father who'd like to take your family to the next level? Are you concerned about your children's interaction with technology? Do you have a plan to actually deal with it, to socialize them, to educate them, to establish consciously the values that you and your family want to live by? Click here for the free training. Like, I've never seen that, but I can see how to start a podcast. And so there's like this massive, absence in the market, which is both a cause and a reflection of what we talked about, which is just this generational dysfunction. And they're not even being an awareness or a conversation. Like, this is what's so valuable about just what you're saying. Just the concept transforms the possibility of families to know that I can stop and create values, beliefs, and a doctrine for my family to live by. And like you and I talked about before, now more than ever, I believe it's an opportunity to do that, because when there is a great upheaval, when there is a lot of uncertainty, it's bringing forth all of the values that we already have, many of which don't serve our children, don't serve our spousal relationship, serve the relationship that we have between brother and sister. And so like all this stuff that's coming to the surface as a result of the current situation is a time that is better than ever to actually go, oh, got it. Like there's this reflection. So this is how we react to things. How do we want to react differently? How do we want to have a different set of values that are dictating the way that we're showing up in life?
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that David and I were talking about in preparation for this live stream over Voxer is that David's like, yeah, I really believe this is the greatest opportunity for your family ever. There's never been a greater opportunity for your family because, like you said, in times of uncertainty, in times of upheaval, these either consciously, intentionally created values are going to rise to the and really serve your family, or these unconscious, unintentional by default values and culture that's been created in your family is going to rise to the surface, and you're going to see how it's not serving your family. But either way, like I see this, David, as the
you
ultimate.
can see it now, right? Like you can see it now.
It's like, whoa, it's right there in front of us. What do we do with this? And I see it as the ultimate pick up the pen moment and the ultimate take responsibility. It's like families have an opportunity as well as individuals right now to really take 100% responsibility for what is, but then pick up the pen and like write a new narrative. Like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is now. It's like, like it's never too late to shape your family's culture. It's never too late to shape your family's brand and like your family's, values. And there's just a tremendous opportunity right now to like, yeah, take responsibility and pick up the pen. Clayton Christensen, a Harvard professor at, he unfortunately has passed away, but really brilliant mind. I want to share this quote in it because a lot of the people watching this, David, are entrepreneurs. A lot of them are business owners. And so not only are we, wanting to be more intentional in our families, but you throw on top of that, this incredible drive we have out there in the business world. He said, people who are driven to excel have this unconscious propensity to underinvest in their families and overinvest in their careers, even though intimate and loving relationships with their families are the most powerful and enduring source of happiness. And the reason he goes on and talks about that in the article more is like, look, as driven people, as entrepreneurs and business owners and driven people in careers, we're like super attracted to achievement. Well, I can do a Facebook Live with David Barron. I can already see right now, like we're getting lots of engagement and comments, and that's like super like fulfilling to me. I can go out and remind one of our kids or two of our kids that are fighting and arguing about a family value that I've been trying to get them to follow for 7 years. Right. And so sometimes it's like, it totally is the long game, right? Like you may not see the payoffs of this like intentionality around culture for quite some time. And so what is it? So I love what you've shared so far around what you want to stand for, what you want to know and be known for, this idea of radical responsibility, why now is the greatest time, for families to actually, because all this is coming to the surface anyways. What's the type of culture that, and again, I'm asking similar questions, but maybe a little bit differently. So you think about these values of taking radical responsibility. That's what we're known for. What about the culture in your home? Like, what's the culture that you and Carol are creating now and that you want to create when you have children, of just like this space that gets created and like the culture in that home?
Yeah. So there's a lot of components, but the first thing that comes to mind is leadership. But you'll see that the values that and the culture and the beliefs that we want to have within our family are also how we're leading as individuals, right? Responsibility, leadership, the capacity to contribute, right? To help other people who don't have the resources to support themselves at the level of support that they need.
Totally.
And that's what we want to see in our family. So and of course, like love and connection and compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
And
but I love that you, and again, I hope, I've never asked David these questions, obviously. I mean, and there's a reason why.
I never thought about these answers.
Yeah. And that's the power of like David's already, and he can go back with Carol and be like, hey, Chris asked me some really interesting questions that it'd be fun to talk about. Like, what do we want to be known for? What do we want to stand for? What's the type of culture we're creating? And the first thing you said is leadership. And what I loved about that, David, is what came to mind for you. And my hair is seemingly like wanting to do its own thing right now in the middle of this Facebook Live.
So is my microphone. So that's perfect.
Yeah. David told me he's about to take flight with his wings because we're all going on the Corona cuts or none thereof. And
it's been getting out of control. I mean, I look like I'm already crazy enough with the stuff that comes out of my mouth. And now I look the role.
So one of the things that you talked to there below is like when you said leadership, and it's things that Carol and I are personally, individually. Will you talk for a minute? We've never discussed this, but one of the things I've really been realizing lately, David, you know the quote, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
I've actually
Did you
experienced a
say
lot of
that?
dynamics. No,
Oh, that wasn't you.
I did not. I
Oh,
didn't come up with it, but I came
I
up
thought
with
that
a
was the
derivation
reveal.
of it.
Got it.
So I've actually experienced a lot of situations where the whole is not greater than the sum of its parts.
Mhm.
Like in mine and Melissa's marriage at times, it was not a 1+1 equaled like 3. It was a 1+1 equals like -1. We canceled each other out and created a deficit. I've also seen teams and organizations where it's toxic and it's not like a whole is greater than the sum of its parts. They're all diminished by it. So I started thinking about the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's missing a piece. And what I added to that quote is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts so long as each part is whole. So if you take a family unit, let's say it's made up of, in my case, 7 people, which is a lot, right? 5 kids.
Yeah.
There is an opportunity for a 1+1+1+1+1, 7 of us to create like, all of that combined, like those 7 people added together creates like 100. If every one of those 7 people feel whole. But if even just one of those 7 people doesn't feel whole or isn't whole, it's really difficult to have that be like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And so I finally, part of my journey of picking up the pen and taking responsibility for my life was like, oh, wait, I can either continue trying to change my wife, who's amazing and perfect, right? In my eyes, I can keep trying to change my children and be critical all the time. Or I can stop being a jerk and actually just change myself. And the more I worked on this entity called Chris Smith and just focused on who I was being and taking responsibility and developing my leadership, and then actually started saying way less in my home and just started trying to demonstrate it more, my individuality of following my calling and getting more clear on my path and my purpose did more for the whole of our family unit than anything I had ever tried to do by focusing on the whole, as crazy as that sounds. And so a big part of family brand is, yeah, we want you to come in and we're going to teach you how to create a culture and a brand for your family. But then I'm going to share a lot of content and feature experts like David to come in and actually speak to the individual parent or the individual child inside of each family. Will you talk to that? Like the importance of, if you really
Mhm.
want to benefit the whole, like who are
Yeah,
you?
I think there's and for some reason I think my podcaster is not working, but we'll just deal with it. The I sound like I'm like beaming in from another dimension.
You're
So
good.
okay, cool. So yeah, there's two things there. One was what you alluded to earlier. As entrepreneurs, we focus so much more on our businesses than our families. And if we were going to really peel back and have a philosophical conversation about this, we would recognize that everything is energy. And so if you have a problem in your business right now, like there's not enough time, you actually don't have a not enough time problem, you have a not enough energy problem. If your strategies aren't working, it's actually not a strategic problem, it's a not enough energy problem. So it always goes back to energy. So we're looking at, if you want to create more in your business, then the only thing that you really need to be focused on is how do you access more energy. Then we look at the realms of your life. And as you pointed out, the sum of the parts only is more than the sum of the whole is more than the sum of the parts, only if all of the parts are whole. I would suggest that if the parts aren't whole, then the sum of the whole is less than the sum of all of the parts. Because what ends up happening is that area of your family or that area of your life begins to drain energy. And
Mm.
so, what we find all the time is that entrepreneurs want to grow their business, they want to grow their bank account, they want to grow their mission. And the greatest growth that they can be producing in that realm of their life comes as a result of stopping the energetic loss in another realm of their life. And I would
For them
suggest that
personally.
for them personally, right? So there's two things. So one is, if your family's not whole, if your relationship with your partner's not whole, that's impacting your business in radical ways. And so often we go into the business to try to solve the problem, just like you were talking about, you'd go into the family to try to solve the problem. But the problem's not in the business. The problem is in your family. Then we look at, okay, well, how do we impact that? We have these other realms of our life. We've all seen the wheel of life, and then it looks like it's a broken wheel. So you want to grow your business, but the real problem is that in your health or in your relationships or with your kids or in your spiritual growth, you're actually lacking. And so if you can complete wholeness, create wholeness in those areas, all that energy will become unlocked into your business. And you don't really have a business problem, you have an energy problem. So we look at these energy leaks, and then how do we address each of those individual energy leaks? We realize that it starts with us. To your other point, right? So in that is, and you and I talked about this, right now, especially during this period of time where it seems like there's a lot of uncertainty out there. There's certainly an increased level of panic and hysteria that we can become entangled in, and real issues and challenges that we need to address. I don't like to call them problems. I just like to call them, challenges, because I know that they're meant to happen, right? For my growth and my evolution. But we need to become solid first. And so that's the self-leadership component, as we become solid, right? And that's the first step. We can't go make everybody else solid if we're not solid. When we become solid, when we become certain, when we start operating from a powerful place, then that becomes even more contagious than the virus. And so we're able to get our family solid. We're able to get our team solid. We're able to get our colleagues solid. And then as you create that energetic solidity around you in every area of your life, that's where all of a sudden everything starts to grow in your business as an entrepreneur. So, the first thing is that, to your point, there's an over focus on the business when you don't really have a business problem. You have an energy problem, and you're leaking energy in these other areas of your life. And so in order to go and turn those into energetic generators versus energetic detractors, you have to look at what your responsibility is in each of those areas of your life, because it's got to start with you. And as you become solid in yourself, that solidity begins to expand into every area of your life.
Totally. And that's Melissa and I have talked about this, David. Like, that right there is the beautiful, amazing, inspiring, and also at times terrifying aspect of being a parent. Is that, guess what?
And a human
Any
being.
of these, yeah, any of these values we declare in our home, guess who gets to be the first and foremost demonstration of it?
Yeah, you.
I can't go and tell my kids, like, I can, but that's not very effective. If I show up from a hard day at work and I come home and I'm like really short with the kids, and then, my kids are being short with each other, and I'm like, hey, you guys dismiss, love, and support one another. I'm not going to do it, but you guys need to do it. Right? It's just like this idea of demonstrating, so one of the things that we teach in the, so when someone, and we've never shared this, but in the course that we're going to launch around family brand, of how to create your family's brand, we believe it comprises of three things: culture, language, and experiences. And one of the pillars of culture is demonstration. It's like, look, either you have a culture of demonstration, which means you have a culture where you, as the leader in that home, demonstrate these things, or you don't. But I would say either way, you have a culture of demonstration. Either you have someone that's demonstrating the things that we have consciously created, or we have someone that's demonstrating the opposite of that. But that demonstration is more powerful than whatever words we speak. This is amazing. Anything? Okay, so last two questions.
I just want to say one thing about that
Yep.
responsibility piece, because you brought it up earlier. Like, I think an important piece is being okay that you're not showing up as the partner or parent that you would consciously intend to show up as when this awareness begins. Because the reason why so many people never move into the phase of personal responsibility is because they create all of these stories and structures to try to avoid looking at who they've been and how they've been, because they think that somehow that makes them a bad person, and that's painful to see, and how could I have operated this way? And so the permission that you give yourself to look at the areas of your life where you're not showing up in congruence with the way ultimately you'd like to, if you were fully intentional and aware of it, that permission is very important. Okay, got it, I haven't been a very good dad. Okay, got it, I haven't been a very good husband. Okay, got it, I haven't been a very good leader in my organization. Okay, got it, I haven't taken very good care of my health. But the lack of willingness to accept that and be okay with it is what creates these resistance structures that never lets us get into it and see it effectively, so that we can create the change. So, like, be okay with it. Like, you shouldn't have been a better dad than you are right now. You shouldn't have been a better wife than you are right now. Why? Because you weren't aware, and no one ever modeled it for you. So give yourself a break. Like, give yourself the ability to go, I'm not being who I want to be, and that's okay, because I know that just that awareness means I'm on the journey to becoming who I'm destined to become.
Guys, this is so profound. Like, the thing that stops people, what David's saying is the thing that stops people from taking that personal responsibility in their life and their family and their home is guilt and shame.
Thinking you should
It's
have.
like this, like, yeah, so I should have, or I was supposed to, or I was like, all of that's in the past. And there's nothing we could have done about what we should have done or what we're supposed to do. The only thing we can do now is what's available to us in the present. But I'll tell you one thing that's amazing, a gift that we can give each other. Part of the story I didn't tell is the only way I was able to get to that place, David, of taking 100% responsibility was because of the space that Melissa granted me at a time when I was like, at a time when she had every right to judge me. She had every right to hold things against me. She had every right to like throw it in my face. She just granted me space to be like without judgment. And I felt safe enough to come in that space and look at things. And like, that was an amazing gift. And so that's another lesson there, that if you have a spouse or a partner or a child or someone that's like willing to come, quote unquote, come back around and like look at some things, man, the space that you can grant them to love them for who they are as they are without judgment or throwing anything in their face, like, can contribute to them realizing it's okay for me to look at these things and take responsibility, because I don't have to be judged for it by someone else. And I don't have to should all over myself for it. Yeah, I totally agree. Like, it's okay. Like, and that's one of the things that we're really conscious of. And we say in a lot of our videos, like, none of this is designed to make a family feel guilty for what they've done. That's why I said earlier, like, I really believe most families, all of us, we're just trying to do the very best we can with what we've had modeled and demonstrated. And so it's like, let's take that amazingness that you have and let's just build on it with more intentionality.
Yeah,
But there's no usefulness in this conversation around guilt or shame or should have or supposed to.
it reminds me of the effectiveness of the 12-step structure in my own recovery from drugs and alcohol, because a big part of it was just, acknowledging that this is what I had done. And another helpful component of it was also just going and making amends to people. Hey, I'm sorry that this is the way I've been, right? And getting all that clearing, and all that really was a permission giving structure. Is that me or you? That's me. My electronics turned off.
No, and the amazing thing about that with Dave is like, there's so much healing in that. And by the way, you guys, I probably didn't do enough justice to David and Carol. I mean, when I said they're the creators and the founders of the Powerful Living Experience, like, really transformational, really successful, organization. They put on really transformational events. I spoke at not this last year, but the previous year, 700 really purpose-driven, inspiring,
2 years. I
heart-centered
think you spoke
entrepreneurs.
2 years at the Powerful Living
Two,
Experience. Right?
that's right.
Yeah.
All things mindset, growth, leadership, like making a massive difference out there in the world, multiple seven-figure business. And what I love about David and Carol is like, they're really authentic though about the journey it took to get there. And they're really authentic about like the challenges that they've faced along the way, but that's also what gives them such an ability to serve, is because of those challenges and the struggles that they went through. And I just want to kind of recap for you guys that, when I asked David these questions of what do you want to be known for and what do you stand for and what kind of culture do you want to have in your home, just this language. And I'm inspired by it, and I want to go talk with my kids about some of the things, this idea of like, what we want to be known for is Bayers take radical responsibility. Right? What we stand for is like living in our alignment, like being authentic to what we say we're going to do. What's the type of culture we want to create in our home? It's a culture of leadership. And just again, what that now creates with simple language, but powerful language, is like, what would it look like for us to start to be those things and model that and demonstrate that and speak that? And if you can commit to that long enough, like, you'll start to change who you're being, like, and how you see yourself, and your kids start to change the way they see themselves. And it creates this trajectory that, okay, Dave, what is something, this is called the Connection Series. What's something that you and Carol do to stay connected? Like, if there's one piece of advice you could give couples, but also would be applicable to families in general, what's something that would help people stay more connected?
Carol and I have a unique dynamic because we run our business together, and she's the boss. So there's the she's president of the company, and so there's a lot of gray area in our life where we're going on a walk together to be connected, and then we're talking about work, or we're in the midst of work and then something personal comes up that you wouldn't be interacting with a colleague in that way in a normalized basis. So Carol and I have time every day. I mean, simple things that we do to connect, especially during this time now. Like, so we do a walk in the morning and a walk at night. And we have to, which is unique to us, or entrepreneurs who are together as couples, and we don't do it great all the time. We do it better sometimes than others, of like really just being present for each other and holding each other's hands and going for a walk and talking about some of the aspirational activities or vision we have for our life that's not like work related. Like recently we've been like kind of designing our new home in Puerto Rico as we're walking around the block.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then in the mornings, before Carol does her crazy workouts on the patio, we spend like 5 to 10 minutes, while having our coffee together. and connecting. And then we do it in the evening before we go to bed. We have tea together. So, um, there's so much integration with our life, with our business. Like, I don't even really think about it as a business a lot of times. And so, but those are the dedicated times that we've carved out that we've become pretty disciplined around, just to give us the space outside of the business to be with each other.
Yeah, and one of the things that
And
I can
and, and
attest to.
one of our focuses too this year, Chris, is relationship, and
Mm,
defining for ourselves what relationship looks like. I mean, identical conversation of what you're having, and probably a conversation that takes place within the family brand structure. Like, what does mine and her relationship look like, so that we're intentionally creating it? Because we've seen how we're able to intentionally design our vision and our mission and our business and create it. We know we can do it. And so, now it's about taking the time to be very intentional about what we want our relationship to be, and to look at our relationship philosophy. That's something that we've never done. It's sort of just, unfolded unconsciously in a lot of ways. And so that's definitely an area of our life that we're focused on this year, and becoming as intentional as we are in other areas.
that's amazing. Yeah, that actually is like one of the, courses that we're going to speak to in the community, but it's because, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts is first the husband and wife, or the partnership, right? Like that whole,
Hmm.
then the whole of the, and adding children in that component. And one of the things that I can say from just an outsider looking in and being around David and Carol is I really admire the fact of how much they talk about aspirations and what they're going to create together. And one of the things that Melissa and I have realized is like one of the most powerful things that we do to stay connected and that creates connection, and I don't think it's talked about enough amongst couples, is like just dreaming together,
Mm.
like talking about what you're committed to creating, and like vacations, homes, experiences, like whatever it is, but just talking about possibility together is an amazing. And for us, it just is when we talked about this, we went live a couple weeks ago and talked about how we're staying connected during this time. And for us, it's no coincidence that it most often happens when we take walks at night or our bike rides. There's something
Mm.
about getting outside in space and talking about possibility that just has us feel more connected, because that's creation. And when you create together, literally life together, like there's nothing that brings you closer. And when you create possibilities together. Last question. You talked about this a little bit earlier, but I just keep coming back to this phrase you said to me a week ago. It's like, Chris, this is the greatest opportunity for families. Within that context, if there was one piece of advice you could give to families of like why this is the greatest opportunity, and like what could I do about it right now as a family? Like how could I use this time of uncertainty and upheaval? Like, yeah, what advice would you have for families right now?
Yeah. So I think there's two things. One, with your family right now, you're either more separated from them than you've ever been before, or you're closer to them than you've ever been before. And so that unique experience brings stuff to the surface, like we talked about before. And so the opportunity is to really do an inventory of what's coming up for you. Like, for example, I'm realizing now that I haven't been in as much communication with my mom as I would have liked to, because I'm aware of it now. Like, now more than ever, she needs support. She needs connection with her children. And so I'm consciously connecting with her more. I'm using FaceTime to connect with her. And I don't know why I wasn't doing that before.
Mm,
And so that's going to be incorporated into, life after #social distancing, is that I want to be connected with my mom more. And that then led me to look at, well, like, you know, I only see her maybe once every 2 years. I saw her at my wedding. She's up in Portland. I get so busy with my business. She's got some physical challenges. My parents are divorced. So it's like bouncing between, my parents. And then now I have new parents through, my marriage with Carol. But I really want to make it a priority to go and see my mom at least, once a year. So it's just looking at what's coming up in the new dynamic, because the new dynamic is exaggerated. And I could go, well, God, I've been a crappy son, and so I'm not really going to dive into this, and never actually get clear on the fact that I really want to be committed to supporting my mom at a higher level, especially now that she's older. And looking at that, I realized, well, my brother's been the one who's sort of by default been assigned to support my mom. And so he and I had a conversation about, how I'm in it with him 50-50 to take care of mom, like he's got a partner and whatever might happen, because like I said, my parents are divorced. And then also I've been able to look at how I show up within the context of my new family. I mean, I'm in a,
mm.
18,000 square foot house with Carol and her mom. And even though that's fantastic, it becomes close quarters after 5 or 6 weeks. And so I've been looking at my triggers and my reactions, right? And I could easily write it off to, well, we've just been locked down for a long, long time. And so, that's why I'm reacting this way. No, I'm reacting this way because it's inside of me. And so, I'm reacting in ways that aren't aligned with the way I want to be with, Carol's mom. We have very different lifestyles, right? And very different values. Like my value is you're quiet when someone else is on the phone. Their value is the floor is clean and they don't give a shit if they're cleaning around you while you're on the phone on an important phone call, right? So it's a completely different set of values, no dirt versus no noise. And so it's just given me an opportunity to feel the discomfort in me. And sometimes I've done things that I wasn't proud of in my reaction, and then I apologize for it. But that's the process of then getting clear on how I want to be. So my long-winded recommendation or advice or whatever we're going to call this is just look at the triggers that you have. Like look at what's rising to the surface. Look at what has become more important as a result of this exaggerated dynamic, right? And then use that as an opportunity to redefine how you want to be. And the reason why I say that, now more than ever, there's that opportunity is because it seems to be when the certainty around us breaks down, that all of our patterns of behavior rise to the surface. And if we can look at the interfamily dynamic right now more than ever is the greatest opportunity for you to do everything, Chris, that you've been talking about in terms of consciously defining how you and your family want to be moving forward.
Amazing. Well, Dave, I could rap and jam with you all day long, man. I love you and Carol and what you guys are up to, and thanks for being here. And man, I mean, the conversation really, what at the essence, for those of you who are just tuning in, Dave and I have been talking about really consciously creating your family, because values and culture exist in your family regardless, but they're either values in a culture that's been unconsciously created and it's in ways that probably don't serve your family, or there's values that have been in a culture that's been consciously created that can really shape and serve. And again, just family brand, like we stand to help families plant their family's flag. Like you can define what it is your family stands for. You can define what it is you're going to be known for and create the culture you want to create. And we want to build families. Like we believe in families. We need your help. So please share this. Invite people to like our Facebook page, pay attention to the Connection series. Every single week, we're going live with amazing experts and guests like David. And if you guys want to know more about David and the amazing events and things that he and his wife, Carol, put on, it's a powerful living experience, really transformational. And thanks again for being on, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think the team put something together for anybody who, wanted our perspective or lens into the family conversation that you and Melissa are driving. It was our ebook and it's like 4 videos. And I think we put
awesome.
at mindhackprogram.com/family brand. So for anybody,
I was going to ask. Okay, awesome. So mindhackprogram.com/family brand. Yeah, please go take advantage of that. We'll make sure we include that in the post and send that out as well. mindhackprogram.com/family brand.
Yeah, just really appreciate the work you and Melissa are doing in an area that's hasn't gotten the attention that it needs because it's a foundation of everything that we do.
Okay. Yeah, man. Well, thanks. Well, we appreciate your help, right? This is super helpful in helping us get the word out. Okay.
Awesome, brother.
Thanks, everybody.